everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is a video response to Mark over at Geordie Gaming, who posed the question, what is a horror game? So join me as I take a look at what I consider makes a horror game a horror game. So, when I was thinking about this video response, I was constantly thinking back to what makes a horror film due to my background. However, for me, you can't take the genre tropes from film and drop them over the video games medium. This then got me thinking, what truly makes a horror game then? Horror games have existed almost as long as the video games market has, going all the way back to the 1970s with the arcade game Killer Shark, created by Sega in 1972. This is touted by some games journalists as the first scary game ever in the arcades. For me, my first horror experience, as it would have been for many of you watching, was Resident Evil in 1996 on the PlayStation. Resident Evil, whilst not the first 3D survival horror, that honour goes to the original Alone in the Dark, unless somebody in the comments can correct me, certainly put horror games on the map in my mind. Horror, for me, is anything that purposely creates the feelings of fear, dread, repulsion or terror in my brain. So, is it the parts of Resident Evil that completely scare the shit out of you that make it horror? And yes, we all know I'm thinking about the dogs bursting through the windows. It still gets me to this day, even though I know it's coming. And I would say, in part, yes, it is these jump scare moments that make it horror, but I think the largest part of it is the fear of the unknown, the feeling of helplessness at times when you run out of precious bullets for your gun, and the fact that you're confined into the one space of the mansion with a character that you develop a bond with and want to save. From there, I started to think about some of the other games that Mike mentioned, and I took a look at Devil May Cry. Does Devil May Cry elicit the fear, the dread, the repulsion, the terror in me? No, it doesn't. So then, is it a horror game or isn't it? For me, I would say it's not a horror game, but an action-adventure game in the hack and slash form. However, it does have a horror setting and uses the demonic iconography that many would associate with horror. I then came around to looking at the games which had more of a human-on-human approach, with Mark mentioning Spec Ops The Line and Medal of Honor. I was one of the people that proposed that you could argue that Spec Ops The Line is a horror game, given that it shows the psychological effects, the horrific acts that humans will inflict upon each other. The source material that Spec Ops loosely used was Apocalypse Now and the novella that Apocalypse Now was also based on, Heart of Darkness. Both of these sources depict heavily the horrors of war and what atrocities humans will inflict upon each other. I, however, once again would not consider Spec Ops The Line to be a horror game. It is a third-person cover shooter with psychological horror tropes attached to it. What I'm driving at is that horror is a very subjective and divisive genre in the film world, but even more so in the gaming world. If you were to take all of the games that have the traditional horror tropes in them, then you would need to look to include games on the list of horror games that would have no parts in being there. Games such as Luigi's Mansion, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, or Disney's The Haunted Mansion. All of these have ghouls, ghosts, monsters that sit well in the horror world, but they are light-hearted, comedic takes on the genre, and therefore not horror games for me. For me, what truly makes a horror game is one that will grab me and instill the fear, the terror, the dread, or the repulsion, or any combination of the four, making me sometimes feel helpless there, sometimes scared out of, as to what is coming around the corner, and ultimately keeping me guessing as to what happens next. These are my takes on the horror genre. It's something that grabs you and makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So that is my take on what makes a horror game, not film. What makes a horror game a horror game? Hopefully it gives Mark some idea, but I think ultimately it it's down to personal opinion, because what scares me won't scare a lot of you. What scares a lot of you won't scare me, and you know it's down to personal taste. All that's left for me to do is thank you for watching. I have been the Ink Northerner, and I will catch you on the next one.